fun to start by talking about a tweet that I ended up not tweeting. It was about PT Cruisers, and the kind of person that buys one and then has blue flames painted on it. I think I was working with something like Batman's foster mom, but it was weak, it was fine, so I just kind of saved it to drafts. And it kind of came after I had made the observation, excuse me, after I'd made this observation that ours was actually, like by far, the nicest car in the entire visitors parking lot of the Cunningham County Correctional Facility. But that the PT Cruiser next to us was like probably second best. I was probably just playing with my phone to kind of distract myself from the anxiety that I was feeling about. I was pretty sure that I was about to shame my family by doing this thing that I always do, which is cry. I'm a crier. It's kind of what I do, and I'm coming into terms with that fact that I'm just that person. I'm the one that cries when they find out that their best friend is getting married, even when it's a green card wedding. I cry sometimes just because I know that it's like the single worst thing that I could be doing in that moment. And sometimes I cry just because it's 8 a.m. and morning is a particularly emotional time of day for me. I did surprise myself this one time when I burst into tears at my GP's office while she was explaining to me the correct procedure for using my asthma inhalers. But mostly, I can kind of see it coming. Like, I know that I'm very vulnerable to anything with father-daughter plot lines and gospel music. And any time that they finish a television episode with that screen that says, "In loving memory of," every time. I once cried last year at a Raconteurs show. It was this one where there was a storyteller who was 103 years old. And I didn't cry at his story, I just cried when Alicia or Laura Louise came on stage and said, "He's 103. Because apparently anything over a century, I have a really serious soft spot for. But it's kind of tough to be a crier when you're so aggressively trying to uphold your family's high standard of emotional repression. And the fact that I know that they have a strong distaste for anything that could be considered a scene. If you're a WASP, you know what a scene is. My father, when we were in the waiting room, my father was just kind of pacing around undramatically. And my mother was sitting on a bench with a pile of books next to her, and she was going through each one, writing my brother's name on the inside cover of like James Pattison paperbacks, and I think there was like a chess book. I was filling out my information at the desk in this visitor's login, and I was overhearing a conversation between these two large guards. They were kind of chatting through their thick mustaches. And the first one said, "Hey, you know what? I think that you could probably be a top 10 marksman this year." And the second one said, "I'd really like to be top 5. And then the first one said, "Well, I think I'm going to try and make the course a little harder this year." And the first one said, "Just tell me what to do and I'll do it." And then the first one kind of just went on this little action rant that kind of involved like ducking and rolling and shooting and stuff. And meanwhile, my mother had paused in her labeling, and she was holding up an issue of Inked magazine with this tatted up seductress on the cover. And I saw her debating until she like made the decision and like neatly printed our last name on the cover girl's bare white thigh. And then the first guard looked up at me and he said, "I'm in charge of firearm control." And I said, "That's great. Here's my passport." The sharpshooter gave me the rundown of the visitation procedure. I think he was talking about hugs and doors. And I just kind of went inside my brain and started thinking about how awkward it would be if I started crying right now. And I had this like twitchy urge just to text my best friend about all the mustaches I was seeing. But I didn't have my phone. Had to put it in a locker. When the guard asked me if I understood everything, I said yes, which just seemed appropriate, if not correct. And he pushed a button, and then the first of two heavy glass doors started to slide open on this thick metal, on its like thick metal frame. And through the glass I could see a pale room with maybe 20 people in it, and with a half wall that kind of divided the jumpsuited from the denim clad. And I stepped into this like fortified cubicle, and I said, "All right, Cunningham, just don't make a scene." So I pretended that I was the kind of person that doesn't get weepy-eyed during documentaries about penis enlargement. And I grabbed on to the handle of the door and I pulled it, and when it didn't open, I just kind of kept pulling it until it made enough noise so that every single person in the visitation room was looking over at me. And then kind of watching me realize that it was an automated door, and that I wasn't supposed to touch it, and that I was making a scene. So behind me I could hear the first door still kind of slowly sliding shut, trapping me as I started to weep in this glass kind of, it's just a glass room as everyone's kind of watching me, and on one side I'm kind of stuck with, one side is just these alleged criminals, and the other side of me is two armed guards and my parents. And despite the fact that I was being observed by like dozens of people, there wasn't the one person I needed, which was just anyone close enough to me for me to make a joke to alleviate some of this tension. But a few minutes later, I was sitting down in the room, and my brother came and sat across from me, and he opened with, "Hey, I'm sorry. I did steal your money, but why are you crying? You can't cry in here." And I reminded him that I'm, tend to get emotional in the morning. And he said, "All right, okay, so it looks like I'm going to get 14 years. And he asked me if people in their 40s still have fun. And then he told me that, like jail is so boring, but prison is better, because in prison, it's like a little city, and you can do pretty much anything you want except for have sex with women." And then he said, "No, seriously, Amy, you can't cry in here." And then, I advised him to stop mentioning the crying, and that it makes it worse. And he told me, "You know what, maybe you should go outside and get mom and dad, and maybe you should send them in." And I said, "Well, no, I have 30 minutes, and it's only been 8 minutes. And he said, "Yeah, how about I just see you next time?" And and he just kind of banished me back to my tiny glass box of shame. And when my parents came in, I went out, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'm just going to have to go finish this outside." So I went into the parking lot, and it was kind of late summer, sunny and cold, which was ideal crying weather. And I sat down on the grass and just cried my tears. And then I heard a woman come out and she said, "Hey, don't cry." And I looked up and I recognized her. She was actually in the visitation room when I was there. And she said, is that your brother in there? And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Don't worry about him. He's going to be okay." And she said, "Don't cry." And I said, "Well, morning was just a really emotional time of day for me," which she didn't actually respond to. She just kind of stood there and like reassured me, and it was pretty nice. And then when I was done, we kind of looked at each other and just like, "Yes, it's over," and she just walked across the parking lot and got in her PT Cruiser with the blue flames beside, and she drove off, which, you know, obviously is way more than 140 characters anyway, so.